Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Coorlas, owner and principal architect of Coorlas Architecture. Today we're going to take a quick look at a small interior remodel job in Revit. So let's jump right in. So what I have here is a model that is already modeled up from an existing conditions survey we did, and we've already removed some of the walls in this model, and I can show you the demolition plan in Revit. When you demolish a wall, it signifies it with a dashed line. So you can also see here in 3D what that looks like. Removing a couple of interior walls, one of which is load bearing for some trusses that span in this direction. And then just a couple of small wing walls here and there to kind of clean up the space. I did want to show you our existing conditions survey software. So this is Magic Plan. If you're familiar with it, it's a great app and software for doing existing condition surveys, getting basically the floor plan, walls, windows, and doors all documented for your client or the customer. And it's a great tool after you survey all the spaces and put it together. That basically builds you a 3D model. And this model, it can translate well into Revit, but we end up rebuilding all of the components ourselves. But it's a nice little feature to be able to show the client basically at the end of the survey what their existing conditions did look like. So I can show you, for example, when you click on a room, you get an information tab here that gives you the ceiling height and the dimensions of the room. And then if you take photos, you're also able to tag or associate the photos with the space. So great little tool there. We also use Matterport, which is a bit more advanced in terms of point cloud mapping and laser scanning. This is an example of a model we've done for a client pre-construction after everything's been demolished out of the space. You're probably familiar with these types of mappings and kind of 3D spaces from Google Maps, being able to rotate the space and move according to these kind of icons on the ground. Really great feature to document what was there before construction and during construction. Both of these tools kind of have their time and place for different types of jobs. For the interior remodel jobs, we've found that this has been an excellent tool. I'll just show you what the report looks like that it spits out, and then we'll jump into the Revit model here. So here's an example. It's a 40-page document that gives you the overall floor plan, and then it breaks out individual rooms and gives you specifications about all the different things in the room, as long as you've documented it. So anyway, let's jump back into our model. So now that you're sort of familiar with the software we used to document the existing floor plan, you can export a 2D CAD plan from Magic Plan, and this is what that looks like. We typically import it into Revit, start modeling our walls and windows according to the survey. And before you know it, you've got basically a model that looks like this. So just to explain real quick again, we've got a kitchen space that we will model today. There's a living room space here, and previously there was a bit of a step up, like a platform here that we are gonna lower. That's why it's shown in red. We're demolishing that out, bringing it back down to level with the rest of the floor, and closing it off to create a private office space. So here's what the space is looking like now. Here's a 3D perspective view that we will populate with the kitchen and do a couple of renderings. So I like to work in 3D a lot of the times. If I'm first just starting to drop in some of the components for cabinetry, for instance, sometimes it is easier in plan view. I had a session with the client the other day, and we just used some detail lines to map out where the countertops would be, the hood, the range, the sink, and an island with storage in it. So that's the overall look that we're going to go for, sort of a galley style with a floating island and a couple of walkways on either side and a dining area on the back end. So like I mentioned, let's start dropping in some of our components here. So I'll start with, I've got end panels. So for the kitchen, end panels or filler panels, there's single and sort of dimension pieces that sort of look like this. And this will act as our end cap. And a neat little trick I like to do is pull out the cabinets about 6 inches from the wall. You could still use standard 24-inch depth cabinetry so that it's not any more expensive. In terms of cabinets, you put a ledger board on this back wall here, and then you've basically just extended your countertop depth to 30 inches rather than 24, which is really nice to have a little more space to push your spices back or any of your other cooking ingredients. That extra 6 inches I have found is extremely useful during cooking and just everyday life. So we've got that end panel in on that side. I'm gonna bring another one over to this side, and you may have seen in the perspective view before, we do have some beams running across the space. There's one existing here that cuts across, and then we removed a wall here that was load bearing, and so we're going to put another beam up in the ceiling here to support the ceiling. And then we introduced a faux beam so that we had a series or a rhythm of 3, and that we can center the island sort of on these two here. So it felt like it had some placement, which will especially be visible when we drop in the lights. So on this end, I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to raise this one all the way up to 8 feet. Or actually, I'm going to try 7 feet because I think we're going to put a soffit in above where the beam is intersecting. So I sort of just place this refrigerator to start as a guide, but I want to move that for now. I'm going to move this three feet and then add another panel there so we can slide this refrigerator back in. We've got a little space to either side. That looks good. Okay. So, just so everyone's aware also, countertop depth refrigerators are typically 30 inches or greater, which is a bit deceiving. When you hear countertop depth, you think, potentially that it's going to be the same depth as typical countertops. That's why we like to do that little trick of setting the cabinetry out 6 inches, putting a ledger board on the back wall to support the countertop, and then you'll see at the end of this you get basically a flush cabinetry system with your refrigerator without having that odd or awkward refrigerator protruding forward in front of your primary cabinets. So let's keep marching along here. And I'm going to start with just a 24-inch cabinet. And I've got all these components. Revit comes out of the box with a lot of great options. I've sort of customized these a little bit just to fit my liking. So I'm going to do just a 3 drawer, 24 inch. When you're doing cabinet layouts, we like to provide them for the clients so that they can go either to a cabinet supplier and then they've got a design to go based off of. But if you're a first-time designer of cabinets or you're an architect that's planning to do some remodel work for clients, this is a good little tutorial here. You'll see it's basically just a game of division, seeing what fits. Using some standard widths. Cabinets typically come on 3-inch increments, so things like the sink, your oven or range, all those are going to have kind of preset dimensions that you're going to have to work around. And if there's anything like these beams in the ceiling that are cutting across, that's certainly going to inform where you can start placing some of these items. So you see here I just dropped in a 24 inch here, sort of conflicting with where we thought the sink would land, but I'm going to keep peppering in some more items so we can see what we're working with here. So this client did want an oven range. So I got a standard 30 inch here that I'll use. Rotate it. And he wanted it approximately in that area. We're gonna have to fit a dishwasher in here, so let's toss that in. Again, that's a standard dimension, 24 inch width for that. And that typically goes adjacent to the sink. So you can see we're starting to get squeezed in there. And sink cabinets are typically either 30, 33, or 36 inches. I think we're going to go with something a little more efficient here, so let's put a 30 inch in to start. So I could just type in sink and then see all of the items that are associated with the sink. So I've got double shaker 30 inch cabinet, drop that in, rotate it, line it up. So this client also did not want the range too far off to that side, which I think makes sense. I'm wondering if we can squeeze this cabinet down here to something like a 15 or an 18 inch to act as maybe a utensil drawer. So I'm going to do 15. I think that's going to be good for our purposes. You also have to consider the purpose of the client's desire to remodel. In this case, this entire property is becoming a rental unit. So, you're talking a little more about short-term rentals, people that don't have much invested in terms of, staying and maybe, getting very familiar with the space. So sometimes you can get away with, smaller kind of drawers and cabinets and things like that in places where you need to save a few inches. So especially in this case, I don't really like to go less than 15 inches. Typically your utensil trays are going to need at least 15 inches in width. So we're going to try and leave that as it is. But you can see I'm already running into a bit of a tight space between all these elements here. So we can forego the utensil cabinet on this side and just kind of swing that over to there for now. And probably bring our dishwasher down in that area. And I'm just gonna shift this up and then realign it. Actually, I'm gonna do a true dimension here. 2 feet. It is 2 feet, okay. Line that with the outside of there. And we'll be able to squeeze a small cabinet to either side, which can either be like a vertical cutting board cabinet, something of that nature, or vertical pan storage. That always works out. I think in terms of design, it would have been really nice to just have this range sort of centered between these two beams here, and then you kind of get your money shot looking across there. But with such a tight wall of utilities, you kind of have to work with what you got and go for more of an offset type of thing. Unless, let's check this out. No, we don't want our sink too close to the range, so we want a little bit of countertop space there. So I'm going to copy this over. And let's see what I have here. I just want a shaker, 1 drawer, shaker, single drawer. I got 12. I might have to modify that to a 9. Unless it fits. It looks like we can fit that in there. Okay, 12 inches is good. Let's use that. So what's neat about this countertop is we're going to compensate for the 24-inch depth range. That's typical. And then you'll have a little bit of countertop space behind it, like I mentioned, for cutting boards or spices that you want to dash up and across there if you have a backless range that works. And then let's continue marching onto this side. We're going to need as much cabinet space as we can get down over here. So 3'3", that's 39 inches. So you can do a double door, which is probably good for our purposes, just to get the big pots and pan storage, and then we'll do some cabinets above for plates and things like that. So let's see. Base, double door, 1 drawer, 39. Should get us right to where we need to be. Just gonna align that, and then let's pop this in 3D and see where we're at. It's good to kind of constantly monitor your progress here. So, okay, not bad. I think I can just hide these for the moment, so we can get a better glimpse at what we're looking at here. I think that's a decent lineup. There's some prep space off to the right hand side here, next to the sink. So I guess I'm imagining that you can take things out of the refrigerator, pop things here, rinse, take things over to your range and cook over here. There's a little extra prep space off to the side here. So let's pop in our sink and our countertop and then start to look at some uppers. Now I was trying to coach my client into considering no uppers, or at least just very few uppers, and I want to see what kind of storage we can actually get out of this wall versus basically just putting all the storage in this center island here. So let's just start by modeling in, or actually dropping in, the sink. So I'm going to place a component, just type in sink, see see what our options are. I have a pre-made sink basin that's a standard 18 by 30. So I think that might even be a bit large for our purposes. So if I wanted to squeeze or bump this up to 33, squeeze this down to a 9-inch if it truly is a vertical pan storage, like baking sheets, things like that. It doesn't need to be any wider than 9 inches. So we'll do, and again, you guys will see there's a million different ways to sort of design these layouts, and it's going to depend on what the client's looking for. So on this model here, I actually have a center line that's hidden there. I can align it there, and then another front edge line that pushes it back into line there. So if he wants the client a smaller sink, we can certainly bump it back down to 30 and squeeze the 12-inch back there. But I have a feeling as a rental, sometimes it's nice to just have a space to drop plates if people aren't getting to that, if they're busy. Don't want that mudding up the countertop space there, so a nice big sink might work okay. But we'll see. So for the countertops, there's a lot of different ways to achieve that in Revit especially. I like to just model mine in place. So go to the components, model in place. Usually just click generic model, although if you want, sure you can put it under casework or some other finishes, but I like to just keep this one a generic model, call it countertop. And do an extrusion. Make sure you set your work plane, level 1, that's fine. I'm not making like a custom datum or level for the countertop, I'll just offset it. You can also click the top work plane, pick a plane, and try and select like the top surface, for instance, of one of these cabinets. It's probably easier to do in 3D. So if I pick the top side edge of the end panel there, I know I'm going to be modeling on top of that. So if I go back into my plan view, I can just select these edges along the perimeter, along the back edge. When I hit my range, we'll just jog around that. Come to the front side of our sink. This is an undermount sink, so I've got some detail lines in the generic model that allows me to just kind of quickly grab and select that. Come all the way to this edge here, and I've already got that back one selected. Use our align or edge match tool here. Clean up all these edges, make sure they're connecting. And that looks pretty good. So for our instance here, we'll just do 1.5 inches. Countertops are typically either 3/4 inch or 1.25. But for architectural purposes, you usually see top of countertop at 3 feet. Casework or cabinetry is actually typically at 2 foot 10 inches. So the countertop depth is actually always a 1/4 of an inch shy of where people think it is, but that's to allow for shimming of the different cabinets and things like that that eventually typically get it up to about 3 feet. So I like to just keep it at that flush number there. Countertop material, use any material you want. I've got a pre-made marble material in here, So I'm gonna go type in marble, white, okay. And let's click OK and check it out in 3D, see if we did everything right. There we go. Finish the model, go back into my floor plan, and now we'll drop in faucet. I got another pre-made model here. Click the place on face so that it's dropping it vertical. And this one I know came in facing down. I gotta rotate it 90 degrees, line it up with the center line of the sink. Right there. And it's typically offset an inch or an inch and a half. So you can either be really precise about it, or just sort of eyeball it. Okay. Actually gonna do 2 inches. And there we go. I think that's all looking good. Definitely, like we were talking about before, putting in some uppers above the refrigerator. I think we're going to be able to slip in at least a 12-inch and then maybe do a header across the top there that intercepts with the beams. So I don't want to forget about those beams. So I'm going to unhide them in my model here. So I am going to model in my reflected ceiling plan. I'm going to borrow a couple of walls that I already had here for sort of a soffit. And while we're doing this soffit up above, we'll do the hood, and then we can slip in the hood insert. So this is going to start at base offset 7 feet. And go up to the ceiling. So it's good, like you saw. I knew that the this wall type just has the stud and then the 5/8 inch jip board on the outside. Before we just raised it beyond the cut plane so that we can't see the inside of the wall anymore. I knew that the outside of the wall was facing that way, so now I can just bring this over. I actually want to switch this to finish face exterior so that I'm grabbing that there. And now I actually just want to double check that this was, yes, cut on the outside. Sometimes it flips it when you make that selection for the exterior wall. And we will copy, rotate, and mirror this over. Align it, clean it up, and we'll basically be able to use that same kind of framework for our hood in the kitchen. But since we're going to do some renderings here, I just want to keep double checking that this is looking the way we want it. So the beam now technically along, this is a slab on grade, so I know we've got load bearing basically all throughout here, for these loads at least. So I can bring this out to rest on well, this actually will go to rest on this point, since this is just going to be a end panel of some sort, probably to save some space and not build out an entire wall. So it's not going to be a load bearing component. So we'll actually take the beam back to this point here, but this is just my my veneer covering that's going to protrude out there, so I don't want that conflicting with the wall that I had there. So we'll just show it like that, and then let's tuck in the refrigerator cabinetry that goes above the refrigerator, but I believe I have it called out as, if I start typing in refrigerator, got shaker 36-inch refrigerator upper. It connects to the wall there. Just place it and then refine the placement there. And I'm not sure if that was a 2 foot tall or a 1 foot tall based on 8 foot ceiling. So let's check. That was a 1 foot. Okay, so that slips in right underneath there. You know, again, if we wanted to scooch this all down, it looks like we can probably squeeze out these end panels to just be 3/4 inch, probably at both sides of these, which I may do. But just for our purposes, we'll just keep kind of chugging along here. I want to show you guys a variety of different options, a lot of different solutions. You know, if this was an issue, you can drop a soffit down and put a 1 foot cabinet. If you have the space, you can shift things down a little bit so that this beam is bypassing it, and then you can get a 2 foot tall cabinet going up to the bottom side of the ceiling, which is what I would prefer. And then you can actually bring out this load bearing wall a little further, save some costs on the beam. So that's what I will do when I propose this to the client. But like I said, for our purposes, we'll just keep moving forward here. And now let's look at the hood. We'll put in our hood insert and then see what kind of wall space we have left over for cabinetry. So I'm going to go back into my reflected ceiling plan, take these walls, and copy them down. I don't know exactly where it is, so we'll have to go back in our plan. And when translating things to plan, you can, in Revit, in the reflecting ceiling plan, select the underlay to be the floor plan. You know, that's a fine option. I also like just coming in with detail lines and sort of outlining the items that I want to see, and then take them, copy, and just paste them directly so that my view isn't getting too clouded with all the other underlay items from the floor plan. I just get what I need. So that's where my range is. The hood insert components, let's drop that in. Go to my floor plan view. I actually think it's a ceiling hosted item, so let me see. Type in hood, get my built-in hood, place on face. Yeah, it's trying to drop it down there. So if I go to reflected ceiling plan and drop it, it should snap it to the ceiling there. And rotate it. I'll bring it back. So actually I want to find out where the center line of my range is. It's right there. I'm just going to kind of pull it through. Take this back point, align it with this back wall there. So now I know it looks like we are just clearing the beam. You know, we'd be able to work around that. And you know, that's either going to look okay to have it kind of justified, aligned with it. Again, not my preference. Probably would have wanted it centered in the space. If I had more time to kind of toy around with this, I might look at that. But again, you know, just want to keep moving forward here to see this all kind of completed here. So this hood component, I had some detail lines that you can see kind of popping in and out here, ghosted in, so that I can snap these walls too. And then I can erase out my guidelines. And we'll have to adjust the depths of some of these, but just want to pop it in 3D, take a look at where we're at. And a lot of different opinions, I think, of the perfect hood height. On some of the more modern applications, I've been keeping it 24 inches above the range. So I'm going to take this and the base offset 7, we're going to set it to 5. And then I have my hood that will need to drop 3 feet to match that. So there you go. And just wanted to jump in this view, see what we're looking at. So I can see already that I'm gonna like this as a full wall, and then that cabinet going up on the other side of that beam there. It's gonna look much nicer. Let's duplicate this view so that we can move around here a little bit, unlock. If I just rotate a little and get sort of a different perspective on that kitchen. And let's see if I could walk without it going too fast. Yeah. Okay. So, this might be a good view too once we get the island in there. To get a good overview, like I was mentioning, there's not that much space on this, what I like to call utility wall, to get in uppers that would be, either conflicting with these beams or, basically needing to build a soffit or a header out around it. So for a rental unit, 2023, people are using their kitchens a lot more for living spaces, so I do feel like it's an appropriate move actually to start to remove some of the uppers, put in some floating shelves so that you can put, picture frames or plants, things like that can warm up the space, make it feel like less of a utility space and more of a lived-in space. And then, we'll have this huge island here that'll have the microwave and plenty of storage for plates, utensils, pots, pans, things of that nature. So let's give that a look, and then we can kind of populate the wall with some shelving or things like that. So let's work on the island now. I'll just kind of borrow a couple of things that I have here. It's usually easier to just change the types. I'll flip it 180. Bring it to the edge. Pull it in. I like to use 3 inches for my offset for these end panels. Typically in custom kitchen construction, you'll get sort of these end panels that are constructed that sort of look like this. And I've also found that it gives me a little bit of flexibility. If we did need a few extra inches here and there, I can always convert this to a single 3/4 inch panel. And, by eliminating 2 of those, you've gained easily another 3 inches on one of your cabinet sizes. So just as a starting point, it's always kind of nice. So I've already talked to my clients about getting 3 feet of space basically behind this island here, so that if we have our stools tucked in only 6 inches, this island is going to be a little shallower than typical, because we've got the 24-inch depth for the cabinets and then only a 6-inch overhang basically for the seating. But because it's a double aisle, I'm not too concerned about basically circulation around here. There's plenty of space on this side, and here, to squeeze by behind some of these seats here. So as you can see in the perspective view, when the seats are tucked in, there's still enough room to bypass, and I think even when they're out, you're still going to have enough space there. So sometimes things on the plan look a lot more congested than they are in reality. That's typically especially true with bathrooms. A lot of the times my clients will feel like bathrooms look extremely small on the floor plan, and you'd be surprised at how small bathrooms need to be to fit the proper components. But anyway, as long as your sort of structural items or non-movable furniture has the appropriate circulation space, you typically should be okay with circulation and navigation, things of that nature. So I just want to get an overall idea of how wide my island is. I think we set it at 10 feet so that we can use standard countertop slab and not pay extra for 2 slabs there. So at 10 feet, you start to divide those up. I know I want a microwave towards the dining area, especially because we have this extra prep space on that side there. I thought it'd be appropriate to be able to kind of take things out, put it there if there's food, being able to serve the dining table immediately from that kind of leftover countertop space there. So let's convert this into our microwave. So I got a microwave cabinet, and then I've actually got a separate microwave component that I had to click out of that cabinetry. So let's find that. So I have a full microwave and cabinet upper. There we go. Just drop that in. Should be set at the appropriate height. But again, we'll check in 3D to confirm everything's lined up. So this, slide over to the edge there. And let's take a peek in 3D. Yes, looks like everything's lining up appropriately. This bottom cabinet, I think I have a handle type that flips from vertical to horizontal there. And with the microwave depth, it's typically shallow enough where, if I highlight it here, you can see we can get an outlet on the top surface of the interior, so we don't have to build out a full utility wall to host outlets, things of that nature. And we can just put a backing panel on these 24-inch depth cabinets. So that's how you would handle that. Let's continue to grab our cabinetry and march along here, see what we have left over. I'm probably going to want to do some drawers, like over and under drawers. So let's swap this out for like a 24 or a 21-inch 2-drawer. I got a 3-drawer, 2-drawer, 24. Maybe this should be 21-inch, but let's start with 24 and see what we've got left over here. So we can get 2 24s, and then what do we have left over? 12. So, like I mentioned before, 12-inch cabinets, not really the best size. So if I can convert all of these to 21 inch, save 3 inches off each of them, align them. Let's see what we have left over then. Another 21 inch. There you go, that's your lineup. So that's a good lineup there, a lot of storage. We're probably missing a garbage bin, which, you know, I don't think you would want it right next to the microwave. Probably throw it at the complete opposite end. I have a feeling they're going to be using, even though it's small, this prep space here just by taking things out of the refrigerator, you know, rinsing them off, and kind of maybe there's a cutting knife block here, doing some chopping and then bringing things over and cutting there. But you don't want to slap the garbage drawer in the middle of a series. I think that kind of interrupts things there. So we can just make this one off to the left hand here a pull-out garbage bin and recycle bin. You know, since it is symmetrical in terms of quantities here, you can even slide this microwave to the middle and then do two cabinets to the right, two to the left, and then keep one of them in over and under. You know, that would or could look nice too if you want to vary the drawer type. So maybe we'll just do that. Let's make this a shaker single, 21, and switch the handle so it's on the top so we know it's a pull out. And I gotta align that, always save. And I know I'll be able to mirror these over, so I just want to basically move this centered. I know I said I thought I wanted it at the end there, and I still might. I think in terms of, you know, opening this oven, if you're opening that door and then trying to open this door and they're back to back, you know, it can get a little busy there. So, you know, let's actually just keep it. That'll be a conversation I'll have with my client. But I do want to put the garbage and recycling pull-out bin there. So let's see how that looked. We're all good. So I'm going to copy over the countertop now, and then we'll modify it, the shape of it. So this should be another 30 inch. It should align there. I'm going to edit in place and just take out some of these unique jogs and sink cutout. Close it up and align this side. And we should be good. So if you remember, you know, we had this sort of outlined at the beginning, showing what we thought the layout would be like. We got it pretty close, I think, you know, with accommodating the dishwasher off to the right hand side of the sink here, the hood, the range, the microwave and the island, seating for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we pop it in perspective, you know, that's a nice view. It's going to be a good photograph for, you know, some of the rental sites. And even over here, that's a really beautiful space. They've got these really nice kind of craftsman style windows on the exterior wall there. You know, that I would love if they keep. We'll put some lighting in here. So let's drop a couple pendants and do a rendering, and we'll wrap this up. I think in the meantime, I do have this perspective set up. I can re-render this. It's an interior view. We'll render it large, so that'll take a couple of minutes to go through. And then I also want to send this version through, so let's rename this real quick to say kitchen island. Since I was moving the view around a little bit, I want to make sure it's set. I think we can actually scooch it in a little bit. I don't know if I need to see down this hallway. There's a whole art to selecting these views, which we can get into another episode here. But you know, sometimes you don't really need to see the entire refrigerator. It's not that exciting to look at on the right hand side there. There's a lot of wall space, dead wall space to the left. Sometimes it's nice to see things concluding into the wall, like the beam, but you just have to weigh, you know, what's the most important here. And I think in this view, it's basically going to be this island shot with the pendants hanging down, and just getting a good idea of what the kitchen feels like overall. So I can just even scooch this in just a touch more, so we lose the edge of the refrigerator and the beam dying into the wall there, and that's pretty good. I'm going to set it at 4'6" eye height, eye level, and we'll lock it in. Save orientation, lock view. You know, I can take hours aligning these views. There's things even in this shot, like this corner up here, that I probably wouldn't want to see. So just tweaking, rotating, squeezing the camera down, opening the field of view, all these little tricks of the trade to get the perfect shot. But this is a pretty good overall perspective here, so let's send this through as well, and then we'll take a look while we're finishing up the lighting. Okay. So lighting is reflected ceiling plan. Pretty easy to drop in some recessed can lights, and I've got my versions here. We'll do 6-inch standard. Could probably get away with just 2 in that space, but we'll do 6, and they can put them on dimmers. And I'll just use some guidelines here. If I want to equally divide this space up into 3 zones, I'll just drop 2 guidelines in there, use the exterior walls, or the column line in this case. Just space this out from this beam here. And actually, I want to put the pendants in first so that we can plan around that in terms of laying out our can lights. So let's go to our floor plan, do what we did for the hood, and I'm going to drop some dashed lines in here to represent the island. I think I already had some lines there actually. That's okay. Just grab them all, copy, paste, align to same place, dashed small. So that's our island. And in discussing with my client, I mentioned that we would do basically 1 light on this side of the beam, 1 in the middle, and 1 on the outside of this beam here. And I think that'll still work. 4 seems like too many. But if the spacing looks a little odd, we may be able to just get away with 2 centered, equally between these beams here. So let's just take a look, and then we can make that decision in perspective, which is why it's a great thing to have all these different view types, so you can really assess, sometimes things look better in plan, and then you jump in perspective or a 3D axonometric view or an elevation view, and they look completely different. So toggling on and off between all those different views really helps in terms of design and showing the client even what these things look like from different perspectives, literally. I'm going to type in pendant and see our options here. Since it's a pretty small space, I don't want anything too obtrusive, so I've got a small pendant here. I'll drop in, and I want to start with the layout that we kind of discussed, just so I can see if it's a good design or not, and then we can go from there. So I use a lot of detail lines to snap my items to. And then once I have that in place, I know it's centered, so I can just use my mirror tool, mirror it over that edge, grab another detail line to find the center line of the island there, and align, or just copy this over to the center. And maybe that's okay. Let's check it out. Yeah, it's not bad, but it definitely brings the lighting and the low part of the lighting maybe a little too far out, further than I would want. So you also have to assess, the drop height here. Yeah, I'm not liking how spaced out they are, so what I'm going to do is eliminate one, and we'll split this in two. Or actually, not even this. I think we'll split the let's see what it looks like if we split the entire island in two. Well, I know where that is. It's going to be the center line. But I did that so we can get this line here. And it's going to land just on the inside of the beam there, which is, a little peculiar. I would think you'd want an offset of at least 6 inches from the beam, so we'll just use that as a parameter. Typically I like to use these grounded items to sort of host in terms of dividing in half or thirds or quadrants or anything of that nature. But let's see what would happen if we did divide it in thirds. So I'm going to take this, copy it down once more, use my dimension, and that's even feeling, I think, a little too close together for the centers. So I'm going to take that, like I said, just probably move it out 6 inches from the edge. And let's see if that works out. Since it's a small space, I think you can get away with 2 pendants, and you can even increase the size of them a little bit if you wanted them now to be a little more, of a statement. So I have a simple bell here. That could look nice in the space. you know, they're a bit intrusive in terms of their size, but because there's only two of them, I think you can afford a little bit of size on something like that. And I think if you keep them, you know, high enough up, they're going to illuminate this top surface here. You're keeping them out of the view plane, like towards the windows. So again, checking from this view, you know, I think that looks fair. But if you wanted them to be a little more refined like that, that works too. So I'm going to move forward with this. And now let's jump to our lighting. And since we did pull those on the inside, now I can use these thirds to space out my can lighting in this area. So that looks good. I mean, that light there will catch both of these, the outside edge of the island there. We will need some task lighting throughout these aisles. And, you know, there's always sort of the design issue of lining lights up with primary spaces versus hallways or corridor spaces. It looks like this will be pretty good to continue this light through this one. You know, we'll just have to see. I think we can get away without any can lighting on the back side of here. Or if we needed to pop in a smaller 4-inch, maybe a wall wash for some artwork on that back wall there, we can look at that too, and then it doesn't fall too far out of line with what we've got designed there. So I'm going to bring these, copy them down here, always save, and looks like one of the renders at least finished up, so let's take a look. They both did. So since we didn't have any lighting in the space, obviously they're showing up dark. I do have embedded lighting in the hood insert there, so that's why we're getting some lighting back there. But not bad overall. I think, you know, I would want to change the sink material to stainless to match everything else. And then obviously it's just going to continue to brighten up when we get the lights added in there. So I also want to grab the outside edge of this countertop here. Paste it so we can see what our work surface is getting. And also a task light for the sink area, which I think I've got a nice flush mount, but I want to locate my sink with a detail line. The center, copy, paste that in my reflected ceiling plan. Okay, that's good. We're avoiding the beam there and everything. Place a component. Let's see if I have a cylinder. So I had to load in this model here. I knew I had a sort of a cylinder light. it's a flush mount on the ceiling. And if I rotate this here, I can see it hanging there. So I want to align it. And I'm sort of going to eyeball it or just center it in the center of the countertop depth there. So it's a little big, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it'll fill in that space appropriately. And then we will need more task or hall lighting. I think I'm gonna propose a separate grid, basically in this space, of some smaller 4-inch cans that can get us our kind of corridor and work task lighting in here. 4-inch standard. I think they're called incandescent, but everything's LED these days. And let's see if we can do that same thirds trick. Let's see what works out better. I think the halves are going to work out better in this little space. To kind of kick these out further. So quadrants instead of thirds. So I got that cut in half from there. It's perfectly centered, and then we'll take it again there. And that way we get corridor lighting behind there. And since that's approximately 3 feet, I'm just going to copy that over. For our aisle there. And hopefully it doesn't conflict too much. We might even be able to kind of carry that on further in this direction. For this bay here, we'll just call that kind of the lighting layout in the bay areas. Since we know it's all symmetrical, these beams are spaced evenly. I can just take these and copy them down, and we've got appropriate lighting in front of our refrigerator and kind of all throughout there. And if we wanted to, we could probably even like duplicate these out on this outside here and then do a quadrant there. That might make more sense. Yeah, it's looking a little busy with at least from this perspective. I think you can treat that other area there with another pendant light over a table or not. But I definitely don't like these sort of jogging all over the place. So let's take a look again. Let's see what this looks like if I copy this out to the outside there. Eliminate these. Yeah, it's a little better. I mean, it shows like the pattern kind of continuing out there. And then let's see from this perspective. Even from there, I think your eye well, now that I'm looking at it, I think I would argue to just kind of march these all the way down. At the regular spacing. Yeah. So let's take a rendering here, see where we're at, and try and wrap this up. We didn't add a shelf to the wall. I would like to just pop that in, one small one over here. We'll put in a little entourage. We'll do a rendering and then wrap it up. So I've got a shelf component. type in shelf, see what we have here. I've got a floating adjustable shelf that's wall hosted, and we don't want it to crowd the hood and everything, and I think we'd offset it from that edge. It's a width 2 feet or 30 inches. Is good for a small shelf there, and you know, things like that probably going to be eyeballed in the field just to kind of see. So this is the datum that I was talking about, elevation. I would want to set that level at the bottom. You know, a 12-inch depth is fine for these smaller shelves, and then we can even copy this, paste it in place, and duplicate it up 1.5 feet. See what that looks like, you know, so you can get some storage out there. Something else I have done, and I guess this is a good time to introduce the elevation view. Interior elevation, go to this view. To get a little more shelf space out of it, you can take this and merge it into the outside edge there. Standard dimensions are always good, so instead of bringing that all the way to the edge there, it's sometimes nice to pull it in to give a little relief. So I would just call that 3 feet, and then we'll just align this upper one. So that doesn't look too bad. I think, you know, it has sort of an asymmetrical look along this wall. I'm trying to work within these beams, trying to fit a lot in here, kind of sort of a high level design in a small space. So you have to be willing to negotiate some of your maybe preferences. Just going to colorize these or materialize them as sort of our wood trim color. And I'm liking this view better now. You know, if you even wanted to, you can take those shelves straight across these spaces too, and have plenty of upper storage, open storage, at least for glasses, mugs, things of that nature, which, you know, could look nice. I think we'll just pop that in just for conversation purposes here. You know, you'd have to look at how far this light is coming, if it's casting too much of a shadow across those. Shelves. Looks like, whoops, scale is a little off here. Just make it easier, more legible. And I'm going to take these all the way across. Yeah, definitely seeing this in elevation now. This squatty little shelf there is not preferable. So I'm going to scooch that all down and put a load-bearing wall there. But I think this is looking pretty good here. Sort of unique look. Sort of got that cabin feel, maybe farmhouse feel, with the open shelving like that. This light is concerning me a little bit with the shelves. So I can see in my reflected ceiling plan, it is sort of casting right down there. So now that we have those there, I'd want to pull that out, maybe center it on between the shelf and the edge of the countertop depth there. Then I'd get a little more light cascading down. And I do have a component that I'd like to add just for the rendering purposes, and I don't know if the client would want to do this, but some undershelf lighting. So I'm just typing in light. Can't remember what I have this called in my file. Yeah, under cabinet lighting. Okay. Makes sense. It's hard to place this, so sometimes I have to get a unique perspective. So let's see if I can get an elevation view there. No. Okay, then I have to cut this model. Which is a good opportunity to show this tool off, our section slice tool. Just cut it all the way across there, and then I'm able to rotate this so I can see the underside of these shelves. Let's see if it's still selected here. It is, and then just drop that in there. Rotate it. So this component is a shelf, under shelf, like light with a little valance, and I have it so it's materialized as the same as the shelf in this case. I'm going to copy, paste, align to same place, and then pick a new host. Or let's see if I can edit the host. Edit work plane. Pick a plane, that way it snaps directly in the same spot. And when I add that, it always drops it down just a hair below the datum of the hood. So I like to go back in my elevation view and slide it back up a ½ inch. So now that we got those there, I can take them, copy them over. And they lose their host, but they're still floating in space there. So let's see if I can use the align tool. Yes. This shelf needs to be slid up ½ inch. Okay, so you'll see in the rendering that adds a lot of illumination down below here, which is great. And for the final rendering, you know, I'd probably add a bunch of mugs across the top here, all the sort of items and entourage that make this sort of a fuller picture. But I want to just pop a couple more things in here and then click render for us. So let's see if I have a book. Sure. Throw a book on this edge here. Kind of twist it, make it look like it was being read. We'll do a mug. Coffee, tea mug. And I think this drops on the floor, if I remember correctly. Got to elevate it to 3 feet. I always just like to hang it off the edge just so I can double check that it is in fact at the elevation that I placed it. Let's see. Yes, it is. So that's okay. We know we can kind of move it around now freely. Rotate that. Looks like, make it look like it was just being used. So, you know, this is always a game of just kind of pushing things around. You have a lot of blank space at one end of the island. It's nice to throw in a big butcher block or something, you know, fruit bowl to fill in that space there. But it's a very white kitchen, so I want to add some warmth. Down at that edge, and it always looks a little funky when you're not seeing the actual edge, so I'm going to pull that in a bit further away. Just center it on that light there so we know it'll be illuminated nicely. You get to see the back edge of that countertop there. That's good. And like I mentioned, I would typically fill in all those shelves. I might just put a plant on there for right now. plant, I've got a nice little thing here that is trying to drop on the wrong level. 3 foot. So obviously that would probably be up on one of these shelves, but let's see what we got, and then we'll do a little recap while that's rendering. Yeah, let's go for it. View, render. I think the last thing I wanted to change is I noticed that the rendering was getting a lot of light, natural light. I think I have the sun coming in from this angle here, which maybe will be okay if we have lighting all across the space now. But I want it to be a little more actually artificially illuminated. So I'm going to try and rotate that sun angle relative to the view more like a 180, 270. We'll go split the difference. 215. And let's see how that looks. I'm going to keep it relatively small, so this goes quick here. All right, so while that's going in the background, we can recap everything we did. So we've got a full setup here. I wouldn't call this a kitchenette, by any stretch of the imagination. It's a full kitchen with deep countertop depths, which again, it's going to photograph really nicely when renters are in the space. It's going to feel very elevated for the size space that it is. If we go back to our existing model here, there was a fireplace that the client wanted to remove, and again, this was the load-bearing wall that we are replacing with a beam and opening up into this area here. So we've got living space and this nice new seating area, which I think we can rotate this now. I'm not really, this view isn't the best anymore now that I see how the kitchen has been laid out. And it's still not bad to kind of feel what you're like in this space, but I would want to fill this wall up with some artwork. But I think it's a really well-functioning, especially rental space in terms of floor plan. We've got 2 bedrooms. It's actually 3, but per code, we're needing to remove this and make this a second office space, just based on some of the utilities and other factors that we have. So we've got a 2-bedroom office with a second spare office, huge living space, nice galley style kitchen, I'm calling, even though it's got a floating island, big breakfast dining table area. It's got a 2-car garage. We've got 2 full baths. There's one here and there's one over in this area. You're just not seeing the plumbing fixtures in there. We reconfigured this space to make a washer dryer room that can be easily accessible and kind of neater to access without needing to interact with all of the back of house space, the furnace, water filter, pressure tank, water heater. This site is in an unincorporated area, so it runs on well water and septic system. And then we've got this bonus room back here that is going to be made into a game room with lounge furniture, ping pong table, things of that nature. So I think it's shaping up to be a pretty nice layout, pretty nice house. I think we're gonna get some good photographs out of this. And the primary design was in the kitchen, and like I mentioned, I think we got everything in there. We got a big sink, basin, which is gonna be great for dropping dishes if these people are having friends over or family or anything of that nature. We've got the dishwasher adjacent to the sink, so you can rinse things off, put them right in there, and then turn right around and put your utensils away. I don't think we really actually had a formal utensil drawer, that we excluded some of the smaller cabinetry here. And I don't think you would want to walk all the way down to this edge. And looking at that now, that might want to be split into two, instead of a double door, two single cabinet doors with drawers on top. So just some things that, obviously this was done fairly quickly, but if you're taking a deeper look at, you have more time to assess, what these elevations actually look like, how your client or, their renters are actually using these spaces like. But let's see here. I'm trying to show off what this elevation looks like in color. These are great views that all our clients really enjoy seeing, and being able to understand the layout of their space, their kitchen, the functionality of these spaces. And I think for what we were working with, this one is turning out to look pretty good. Let's take a peek at our rendering, see where we're at. Yeah, not bad. So like I mentioned, I wanted to get the sun angle off so I can really assess what the lighting was looking like in the space. And I do think switching to the 4-inch cans that run in the, we'll call them circulation aisles between these dashed lines here, which represent the island and the edge of counter, really gives you a nice perspective running all the way down. We may be able to, after we get out of the restriction of these beams here, space these out a little bit more, so probably save 2 cans and space, so we just have 4 instead of 5 running down there. Same thing for this space. You might be able to just put 1 in this space, 2, but 1 in each aisle. So let's hop back over and take a look at what our rendering looks like. This is looking pretty good in terms of lighting, layout. I think it's got a inviting, fresh look. Nothing super unique, but definitely has unique qualities to it in terms of the existing windows that were on the backside there. I'm seeing a couple things. I forgot to close in the back end of the end panels here. I think there's plenty of space to navigate behind these chairs, so I'm not really worried about that. Adjusting the heights of these pendants and the sizes of them can definitely change the space. But I have a feeling this is going to be a very used countertop space in terms of people coming, sitting, talking, working in the kitchen. I always enjoyed having sort of larger dome pendant lights like this that sort of host the space in terms of lighting. And then reducing the size of the cans in the ceiling is always a nice touch. I think having more but smaller cans is a little bit more of an elegant look, and then putting them on dimmers really gives you the ability to tone down the light coming from the ceiling and accentuate the light coming from your specialty fixtures like these pendants or the flush mount above the sink, or even the under shelf lighting. So again, I can come back in this model and dim this light, which looks like it's getting a little too bright there. But yeah, overall, if you've got an existing layout that really isn't working, and in this case it was not, there's a lot of possibilities in terms of rearranging things cost effectively. So in this case, the biggest move we made was the sink was actually located in a peninsula, sort of in the middle of the space. So we know we're going to have to move the line out to this outside wall here. But definitely worth it in terms of this space and this layout. So hopefully this was somewhat educational, and if you enjoyed this process, tune back in for more. We'll definitely go through existing conditions, remodels, new constructions, and additions, things of that nature, what they look like in terms of designing them in Revit and 3D, using multiple perspectives, coming up with cost-effective techniques so that we are getting high-end design with low cost. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.